Chapter 1. The Concrete Tomb. The fluorescent lights hummed their monotonous death song overhead, casting everything in the bunker with a sickly yellow pallor. Liam pressed his back against the cool concrete wall, clutching his weathered journal to his chest like a shield against the oppressive silence that had become their constant companion. 7 days! 7 days since Paul had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and the growing certainty that they were never getting out of this place. Still writing in that thing? Evan's voice cut through the quiet, dripping with a kind of casual cruelty that had become his default since their situation turned desperate. He lounged on one of the vintage couches in what the faded signs cheerfully called the community recreation area. His muscular frame sprawled across the orange and brown upholstery, like he owned the place. Even trapped in a concrete tomb 60 feet underground, Evan Hayes managed to look like he was holding court. Liam didn't respond immediately. Instead, he continued documenting their daily rations, the temperature readings Mike had been obsessively taking, the way Vince had started talking to his camera more than to them. Someone needed to keep track. Someone needed to remember. "Leave him alone," Mike muttered from across the room, not looking up from the ancient control panel he'd been trying to hotwire for the past 3 days. His glasses reflected the panel's dim indicator lights as he worked, methodical and focused even as sweat beaded on his forehead. "At least he's doing something useful." Evan snorted. "Right. Writing poetry about our feelings is really gonna get us out of here." "It's not poetry," Liam said quietly, finally looking up. His brown eyes were rimmed with exhaustion, dark circles that spoke of too many sleepless nights. "It's documentation evidence. In case..." "In case what?" "In case they find our bodies in 20 years. Evan's laugh was harsh, echoing off the concrete walls. "Face it, college boy. Nobody's coming for us. We're already dead. We just haven't stopped breathing yet." The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with the fears none of them wanted to voice. It was Vince who broke it, his voice small and hesitant from where he sat hunched over his camera in the corner. Maybe Paul found another way out. The words hung in the stale air like a prayer, desperate and fragile. They'd all thought it, of course. In the first few days after Paul disappeared, they'd clung to that hope like drowning men clutching driftwood. Maybe he'd found a hidden passage. Maybe he'd gotten through one of the sealed doors. Maybe he was already topside, getting help. But 7 days of searching had revealed nothing. No hidden exits, no secret passages, no miraculous salvation. Just more locked doors, more dead ends, more concrete walls that seemed to press closer with each passing hour. "Paul's gone," Mike said, his voice flat and matter-of-fact. "Whatever happened to him, he's not coming back to save us. We need to accept that and focus on getting ourselves out." Evan sat up straighter, his blue eyes gleaming with something that might have been anticipation. "So what's the plan, genius? You've been poking at that panel for days. Please tell me you figured out how to open the main exit." Mike's jaw tightened. "The main exit requires authorization codes I don't have. But I think I can bypass some of the internal security doors. If we can access more areas of the bunker, maybe we'll find another way out. Or at least supplies that aren't 40 years past their expiration date." Liam closed his journal, feeling the familiar weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. As much as he hated to admit it, Mike was right. They couldn't keep surviving on stale crackers and the slowly dwindling water reserves. And sitting in this ersatz living room from the 1960s, complete with its avocado green appliances and wood-paled walls, wasn't going to save them. "What do you need us to do?" he asked. Mike gestured to a section of the panel where several wires had been exposed. "I need to reroute power from the residential systems to the security grid, but it's a two-person job. Someone needs to hold these connections while I work on the main circuit." "I'll do it," Evan said, already pushing himself off the couch with predatory grace. About time we stopped talking and started acting. As they worked, Vince continued filming, his camera capturing their desperate attempts at salvation. The soft whir of the device had become as constant as the humming lights, a mechanical heartbeat in their concrete purgatory. "You know," Vince said, his voice thoughtful behind the lens, "this place is like a time capsule. Everything preserved exactly as it was when they sealed it up." Liam glanced around the room, taking in the details with fresh eyes. Vince was right. The furniture, the decorations, even the magazines scattered on the coffee table, everything screamed 1960s Cold War paranoia. Duck and cover pamphlets sat next to copies of Life magazine featuring Kennedy and Khrushchev. A pristine record collection lined one wall, albums by the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and other artists from that era arranged with military precision. Makes you wonder what they were really doing down here, Leah murmured. Government bunker. Evan grunted as he held two wires together for Mike. Probably some top secret bullshit that's been declassified for decades. But something nagged at Liam. The bunker was too elaborate, too comfortable for a simple government shelter. The residential area alone could house dozens of people for months, maybe years. And some of the equipment they'd glimpsed through locked glass doors looked far too sophisticated for the 60s. A sharp crack echoed through the room as sparks flew from the control panel. Mike jerked his hands back, shaking them as the smell of ozone filled the air. "Shit," he muttered. "I think I'd fried something." For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a sound like a mace of door lock disengaging, they heard the distinctive hiss of pneumatic seals releasing somewhere deeper in the bunker. They all froze, staring at each other in the sudden silence. "Did you just—" Evan started. "I opened something," Mike whispered, a mixture of triumph and terror in his voice. The fluorescent lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. But now there was a new sound threading through the bunker's ambient noise, a faint mechanical humming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Liam stood slowly, his journal forgotten on the floor. Where did it come from? Mike was already moving, following the sound with the single-minded focus of a bloodhound. They trailed after him through the residential area's maze of rooms, past the communal kitchen with its cheerfully yellow cabinets, past the recreational lounge with its pool table and television set, past the dormitory-style bedrooms where they'd been sleeping fitfully for the past week. The humming grew louder as they approached a section of the bunker they'd never accessed before. At the end of a narrow corridor, a heavy steel door stood ajar, the first open door they'd encountered since arriving. Emergency lighting bathed everything in red, casting their shadows long and ominous against the walls. Vince raised his camera, the mechanical whir barely audible over the growing hum. "Should we?" "Hell yes, we should," Evan interrupted, already pushing past them toward the door. Finally, some progress. But Lem hesitated, something cold settling in his stomach. In his journal, he documented everything about their confinement, including the unsettling details others had dismissed. The way their initial entry into the bunker had been too easy, as if they were expected. The strange dreams they'd all been having but never discussed. The growing certainty that Paul hadn't just wandered off. "Wait," he said, but Evan was already through the doorway. Beyond lay a corridor unlike anything they'd seen in the residential area. Where the living spaces had been warm and inviting despite their age, this passage was purely functional. Concrete walls, exposed pipes, and harsh industrial lighting that cast everything in stark relief. The air was different too, carrying a faint sweetness that made Liam's skin crawl. On the wall beside the door, a placard in faded government script read, "Recirc Warday O Theory Person Now Own." Mike whistled low. Now we're getting somewhere. But as they ventured deeper into the research section, Liam couldn't shake the feeling that they weren't exploring, they were being led. And somewhere in the maze of concrete corridors ahead, something was waiting for them. Something that had been waiting for a very long time. He opened his journal again, pen poised to document their first real breakthrough. But his hand trembled as he wrote, and the words seemed to blur on the page. Day 7. We found a way deeper. God help us all. The humming grew louder, and in its mechanical rhythm, Liam could almost hear something else. A sound like breathing, slow and patient and hungry. They were no longer alone in their concrete tomb.